Yes. So in my last video towards the end, I said I will be touching on that question, is God interventional? And I think I said I asked a couple of people if God is interventional or is not. And for some people, they said God is interventional. And for me, when asked, I have said, all right, I like to look at things very objectively. And so I have said, if God is interventional, they should give me examples. So for most of them, they've given me examples where they believe that in certain scenarios, which they call miracles and testimonies, which they believe and they say they've witnessed firsthand that God has intervened. And then for me, I ask the questions why in other mighty scenarios where we expect him to come through for us, he hasn't intervened. And so if that is the case, then it means that God is selectively interventional. And so it is in that scenario that I'm here to continue. So this is like a corollary to that particular, post I made at the end of itself. So for me, I am asking if he's selectively interventional. So then we begin to re-question again more things. I think the question I asked you was if God is omnipotent. So I'm asking if he's selectively interventional. So this me taking, at face value what those people posited, the ones who said that, yes, they have seen him intervene firsthand. So I just don't want to be, biased. I know that we are all prejudiced. So for me, I'm trying to critically analyze these things exactly how I see them, because a lot of things happen, and I must say that where I did not see, the so-called metaphysical intervention, it kind of surprises me, and those things are very disappointing, especially when you've been raised to accept these things. So I'm asking that if he's selectively interventional, then that means that he is not omniscient or omnipotent, right? So it simply means that he picks on the very little things that he can solve, because it's virtually obvious that the things that he has solved that we term as miracles and people give us testimonies, then these things are just limited to very, very, I don't want to use the word minor, but I think when you look at the description of, the gods, and then the miracles that they actually intervene in, and then the ones that they fail to intervene in, then, you can call them minor compared to the description of the mightiness of these gods. So if they intervene in these minor things and leave the major things, then it means that they are not almighty, right? So it means that they are not omniscient, omnipotent, they are not almighty. So it now begs the question, why then should we pray? Or maybe we should only pray when it comes to minor things, knowing fully well that these are the things that they can handle, and there are certain things that they cannot handle. But then when you look at the scope of our prayers, our prayers are oftentimes encompassing. So we pray in every situation, right? If you look at the Christian theology, you see that it is often said that we pray in all things. You pray all of the time, whichever scenario you pray. And it makes me just wonder why we should really be praying. I think George Carlin kind of summed it up when he said that, and here is something else, he said another problem that you might have, suppose your prayers haven't answered, what do you say? And then he said, well, maybe you say it's God's will, or you say, let thy will be done. And then he said, fine. So if it's God's will, then he's going to do what he wants anyway, right? So why the fuck bother praying in the first place? Seems like it's a big waste of time, because couldn't you just keep the praying part and just go right to his will? Like, it sounds very, very confusing if you understand what he means. Because now, if we are looking at it from a selective angle, so it means that there are certain things he's going to answer, certain things he's not going to answer. Because when many things don't happen, I think I kind of talked about it in that omnipotent video where most people kind of exonerate God when certain prayers are not answered. So they say it is his will, you cannot understand. There's a reason why he didn't answer this prayer. There's a reason why he answered this prayer. If God answered certain prayers, you wouldn't really understand. Probably it would turn out this way, which sounds like an excuse, right, to me. So for George Carlin, he's looking at it from a very confusing angle. He's wondering that, fine, if you say that let the will of God be done, or whichever way it is, whichever the outcome, you still say that it was God's will that's been done, then why pray in the first place? Why even pray at all? Which is the question I'm just asking. Why do we really need to even pray at all? I'm trying to establish a fact, which is, if you observe it here, I'm trying to just establish a fact, because I am looking at life itself, and I think that a lot of human beings kind of get a lot of things very wrong, and in a way if you have to establish certain things, then it helps to gain clarity. If we can really tackle this particular question, then maybe we might either just cease to pray, or if we have to keep praying, we'll be praying for the mental reasons and the mental benefits and the consolatory reasons that prayer affords us, right? So at least, when you pray, prayer kind of comforts you, knowing that you've handed all of your worries and your prayers to somebody else. So prayer kind of comforts you in that way. So if that's the reason why we pray, that's kind of good, that's kind of therapeutic, and so that's kind of healthy in a way. But if you are praying with the real expectation that these problems get solved, then it kind of skews a lot of things and it ruins a lot of things. And it is in this situation where right here in Africa, we cannot have a lot of problems. People pray, people expect many things to happen, but then it is very obvious that a lot of these prayers are not going to be answered except for human action. For me, I am tackling this question because I really want us to bring the human factor right here, to make it very obvious, because the human factor is very important. Once we start seeing the human factor and we start separating the human factor from the metaphysical factors, then we can now begin to get a solution in our continent and in our country entirely. I think of recent I saw a particular post, a post from the Minister of Nigeria, where he said that only God can intervene in the security issues that we're experiencing in Nigeria. You see, that is very senseless and baseless, especially when compared to this particular scenario or the examples and analogy that have been given. How do you leave the security and the very many issues that we experience in the country to God? Given the fact that we have established that this God is either selectively interventional or non-interventional at all. So now, if you leave these security issues to God, and then this God, which is either non-interventional or selectively interventional, then it simply means that there's not going to be any solution in sight. So this is where now we now bring in the human factor that now shows that it is human beings that would eventually solve their problems regardless of how it is. I think that I do not like to make my videos bulky, but I'm using this very easy way of explaining things so that I can be able to explain these things in a very easy, communicative manner to you. I'll continue my next video. I do not know where I'll continue. I'd like to maybe sit down and think about how I can continue this video and see how I can go. I'm thinking of picking very different examples from history and see how I can explain these things and show how human factors have been responsible for everything. Human factors have been responsible for everything, and everything. And that if there is a God anywhere, then he probably has just done his part by creating this world, creating human beings, and he has left them to solve their problems. Either create problems or create the best, or create blessings, create whatever it is for themselves, solve their problems, create misery, create solutions, whichever it is. I believe that if there is a God, because as an agnostic myself, I do not have a definition for a God. I do not know how the world came to be and all of that. So I kind of just, maybe I should talk in my next video about the theist, the atheist, and the agnostic position. I think that it will be beautiful for me to establish that point so that you can now get from the angle from where I kind of reason. And I think there is a sane way to reason. I think that excuse me, I think that it's a sane way to reason when you look at it from an agnostic point of view, where you understand these things. And I must say before I end the video that I kind of think that atheists and theists are kind of very arrogant people that actually think that I kind of think that they're egotistic people, mentally or psychologically egotistic, that they kind of think that their positions are really strong. Why the theist maintains the position or the belief that his own belief system is the overall supreme, the atheist kind of discuss it without also giving or affording something very, very, very credible and incontrovertible that can at least counter the theist point of view. But I kind of like the neutral agnostic position, and I think the admittance of ignorance from the agnostic position, that the agnostic kind of admits that a lot of things are limited, he doesn't know. And I think that is the position that humans should maintain. In that way, we can now understand the things we do not know and let them stay. And then the ones that we know, we can now afford solutions to them. So this is just me, Great Dave. Like, as usual, I just like to talk, and I like to reason. I like to bring out these different descriptions and then these different comparisons and analogy in a very simplified manner. And I'm trying my best to be non-prejudiced, even though, yes, at least all of we humans are prejudiced, and regardless of how it is, we can always tell that we are subjective human beings. But regardless, subjectivity can still be very helpful if it is put out in a very sane way. So I'm Great Dave, and yeah, it's it from me to you today. And for now, I'm out. I'll see you again next time.